How many of you guys have experience handling firearms? Probably varies throughout the class. Let's start by taking a look at a picture. Does this look like a good idea or a bad idea? Probably bad, right? It's a comical picture, but it does show that negligence and overconfidence are two big issues in firearm safety. And that's what we'll talk about today. So a little about me. I've been an instructor for several years now. I do enjoy teaching, and I like passing along the knowledge that people can take forward and enjoy firearms in the future safely and competently. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to start with the safe storage of firearms. Next, we're going to look at the safe wearing of firearms. And last, we're going to talk about the cardinal rules of gun safety. So starting off with storage, we'll take a look at the one on the left. That's a floor safe. These are beneficial for a number of reasons. First, they can store quite a few firearms in them. They're also very heavy and can be bolted to the floor in the right area. On the flip side of that, they are difficult to maneuver, and you may not always have room for something of this size in the home. So an alternative to that would be what you see on the right. It's a smaller safe, still encloses firearms and renders them safe. Probably only going to hold one, maybe two firearms, but this one has a fingerprint scanner and various locking mechanisms, but these safes are a solid option for storing firearms in the home. Other mechanisms, the one on the left there is a chain lock. I've got an example of that, but the lock you see there says Project Child Safe, and it's an organization that distributes those out, and a lot of times those are free of charge at your local law enforcement agency. We'll take a look at one. So I've got a safe firearm here, and this one's already applied. But essentially how it works, the chain goes down through the slide, down through the magazine well, out the bottom, and comes with a set of keys. And we want to make sure that when we're storing these, the firearm and the keys are stored in two separate locations. How this works, if the slide were to be sent forward, as you can see, it keeps the slide from going all the way forward, this portion here from going all the way forward, and that gun will not fire. So it renders the firearm safe in that way. The one on the right is a trigger guard lock, and essentially using the same firearm, what it does is it covers, this is a trigger guard, and the trigger's in there within that. What that does is it covers that area so that the trigger cannot be depressed, essentially rendering that firearm safe that way. So both accomplishing the same goal, just with different mechanisms. That one also has another fingerprint scanner, various locking mechanisms on those as well, but here's a couple of options. Let's look at wearing firearms now. So taking a look at that picture on the left, does that look like a safe method? Probably not, right? As you can see there, the trigger guard that we just looked at, it's not enclosed, it's not kept safe, so that trigger can get caught on a piece of clothing. Also, that gun's not really secured to the body, so it can flop around and actually fall out. So not a great idea to carry that way. Ones on the right are a much safer option. Those are a couple of different options of holsters, and I've got one here as well. Essentially, what this does, first, it will guard that trigger and trigger guard area, keeping that area safe. And it also provides, these typically have some sort of locking mechanism that has to be overcome before the firearm will come out of the holster. This one has a lever that has to be pulled back. This one's called a paddle holster for this big piece of plastic. What it does is it goes down inside the waistband and locks in place, and it keeps the firearm secure to your body. So you won't have that flopping around, falling out issue to deal with. Looking at when we're actually handling firearms, we'll talk about these cardinal rules of gun safety. So the first one is we want to treat all firearms as loaded. So regardless of if it's loaded or unloaded, we want to assume that it's loaded. That just makes us safer in how we're handling them. Kind of piggybacking off of that, we always want to point the muzzle in a safe direction. So if we're always assuming the firearm's loaded, we never want to point a firearm at anyone or even in their general direction. That just maintains that safety factor that we're looking for. Next, we want to be aware of our target and what's around it. So, for instance, in a range setting, we've got our target set up. We want to make sure there's nobody wandering around in between us and the targets, around the target area. We just want to make sure we ensure that safe environment for everybody involved. And then last, we want to keep our finger off the trigger and outside the trigger guard until we're ready to fire. So if the finger isn't touching the trigger, it's outside that trigger guard, the gun shouldn't go off. Just an added measure to add to that safety level we're trying to achieve. Wrapping up, I just kind of wanted to touch on the importance of a quality training course, one that includes both classroom and one-on-one hands-on instruction on a range. Just adds to that level of knowledge and competency. And then also we want to remember those safe storage options for when the gun isn't in use. So looking back on the topics, we talked about safe storage options. We looked at safe wearing methods with those holsters. And then last we touched on those cardinal rules of gun safety from when we're actually handling the firearm. I found a study, it was done by the National Violent Death Reporting System. Basically, it's an organization that gathers statistics that involve firearms-related injuries and deaths. And this particular study was over a span of a little more than 5 years, and it looked specifically at children aged 0 to 14, and they found over 200 deaths in this particular study, which is an alarming number, but I think we all could agree that one is too many. So if we keep all these safety methods in mind, then we can avoid situations like what we see pictured here. So remember, safety is our number one priority. And if we do practice safety first, then we can enjoy firearms like these two individuals here in a competitive shooting environment, among many others. But remember, safety is our number one priority. Thank you.